I needed that, you know. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Takes me back as well, obviously, to the Jim Jones review, but that was Rock and Roll Psychosis. I'm in Salford. The band are at Maida Vale. So, Jim, what made you get back in the saddle then?
COVID obviously knocked everyone out of the saddle.
Yeah.
Loads of musicians and artists suffered through that. But it was one of those things where doing the Righteous Mind became impossible because of COVID stuff. And a friend of mine, Gus, who programs one of the stages at Wilderness, kept bugging me to do this slot. And I kept saying, no, I can't do it because the guys aren't ready. He said, can you just put a rocking band together and play for an hour? And I thought, like, you know what, I'm going to just email a load of people, and as soon as one person comes back going, oh, well, I could if it was the, you know, as soon as it becomes a bit of a headache, I'm just going to say no. But everybody said yes, and it was, I mean, we worked hard getting the set together, but it was kind of really easy, kind of smooth. And it just went from there. The planets keep aligning around stuff and just not trying too hard. You know, as you know, running stuff sometimes can be that Sisyphean task of like dragging a rock up a mountain just to watch it roll down again the next day. But with this, it just keeps lining up. And so just as long as it keeps lining up, we'll keep playing.
Well, you know, you have something of a reputation, Jim. Having seen you play with both of the bands that you mentioned previously and the Hypnotics, you've always been in one of the best rock and roll bands around, and so your reputation does precede you.
That's why we love you.
Well, no, but it's true though, isn't it? And that's why people wanted to play in your band. But so how did the Memphis thing come about then?
Well, a friend of mine is, he's probably listening in. John Getz is listening in Atlanta. And we've been friends since way back in the old days, Hypnotics days, when I lived in the States for a bit. And probably best not to go into those darker times too much. But he's always told me that he had a dream to sort of set up a label, you know, like a cool independent label. And he's finally doing it and got in touch and was like, you know, I like the sound of your new band. I'm going to set this label up. Will you guys be the first thing on it? And I was like, yeah, fine. And then the next thing I was out in, you know, Memphis and Muscle Shoals and Nashville looking at studios and still kind of, you know, thinking like, nah, this will never happen. And then the next thing, the plane tickets started arriving, and we all went out there to Memphis, an incredible trip, and recorded an album.
I mean, you couldn't write that, could you, really? Because, I mean, like I say, you are associated just firmly with rock and roll, and then going to the home of rock and roll, Memphis.
It's like, it's a holy grail, for sure.
Did you go to, I mean, maybe you've done it before, did you go to Sun Studios? Did you go to Graceland?
We did, and the guy that was running the studio, I'll give him a shout, Scott McEwen, who runs this really fantastic studio called Memphis Magnetic. He just knew everyone in town, and he was like, oh, you want to go to Sun? He made a phone call, and the guy who sort of manages the place sort of drove a couple of hours and let us in and just let us have a lock-in there and a jam in Sun Studios.
Oh, man.
But there was lots of that going on, you know.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Grail stuff.
I mean, it was
like visiting churches, you know.
Oh, completely. I mean, in 1988, I think it was, when myself and John Langford and Trace and Sally Timms went over for a promo trip for a Johnny Cash tribute album that we did. Excellent. We went to Sun Studios.
Yeah.
And it had been an insurance office just before that.
Right, yeah.
It had been salvaged. I mean, you know, it's like knocking down the cavern, isn't it? It's just ridiculous. Did you go to Graceland?
No, I have been before.
Right, okay,
I've been with my wife, Jess. We went there, yeah.
You got to, haven't you?
Yeah, and of course Stax as well. You know, like, Stax is like one of the, you know, they knocked it down and then realised, what do we do? So they rebuilt it for the tourists. But I kind of think that's what's going to happen with Denmark Street in London. You know, they knock all that stuff down and give it a couple of years and everyone will go, do you know the history of this area?
Yeah.
And they'll rebuild some kind of tribute to it that will be, well, the Stax Museum isn't half-assed, it's really good, but anyway, I'm going off the subject.
Right, no, great. I'm just thinking of a kid in a sweet shop with you in Memphis, which is a great thought.
Yeah.
So where did you get this particular band from then? They're just mates, are they?
These? Yeah. Well, of course, you know Elliot and Gavin.
Yeah.
And Stu has done saxophone stuff with me on a few things in the past. And Colton and Ali were sort of friends when myself and Ray from the Hypnotics were growing up. And
Jim, you've never grown up.
No. Well, you know, when we were teenagers.
Right.
But yeah, they're just always really great, you know, sort of big music fans, and being sort of a couple of years younger, you know, the people that you meet that turn you on to all the great music.
Yeah.
They were them, you know, and Carlton's always played guitar. And me and Gavin and Carlton, when I wasn't touring with something or other, we used to do like a Sunday, just for fun, a Sunday thing, and Carlton would come and play with that. So he was a sort of an immediate kind of shoe-in, you know, for doing this, because I knew he'd be up for it and be available.
Well, you know, what you're doing is brilliant, and, you know, the Voodoo single it sounds amazing, which I know you produced,
thanks, man,
so just great work. You've got a new song coming next week, haven't you?
Yes, yeah, a kind of a gunfighter ballad type song. It's called Your Arms Will Be the Heavens.
Right, excellent, okay.
It's coming out on the 9th.
Brilliant, well, send it me, will you?
Yeah, man. Yeah,
Tom,
for sure.
And also next week there is a tour being announced.
Yes, we've got a load of dates around the UK in the spring, and so we'll be announcing and putting up the ticket links next week.
Fabulous. All right then. Well, like I say, just a real pleasure to speak to you again, mate. And
you, man. Thanks for having us.
Always a pleasure. And so you got one more tune to do for us. What's this one?
We thought we'd tickle the old Hypnotics back catalogue and do Shakedown.
Brilliant. Okay. Thanks, Jim.